approval of the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
Been moved and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. Motion passes. Next is the consent agenda. Motion to approve that.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Been moved and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. Motion passes. Next is public comment. So we got a lot of new faces, so I'll kind of describe the process that we use in city council. Public comment will be used for anything that's not on the agenda. Okay, so if you're here to speak to something that's on the agenda, we'll announce it, we'll introduce what the item is, and then we'll ask for public comment at that point. So just raise your hand and come up to the podium. Once everybody's had a chance to speak, we'll close public comment section, and then we'll open it up to council discussion. That's just for the council members to discuss at that time. So, that make sense for everybody? All right. Is anybody here to speak to something that's not on the agenda?
I might. I don't know what's on the agenda, so I'll move.
If you want to just step up to the mic and
My name's Alan Wright. I'm a resident here in town.
what's your address? We have to have.
822 Jersey Street. And I don't know if this is on the agenda or not, but I just wanted to talk about blighted properties in town. There's a lot of them, and there's some that have been blighted for years, and I know they've had notices, and nothing ever happens. So I'm wondering what we can do to going forward, that there's actually, teeth or something that can be enforced, rather than just sending a registered letter and it gets ignored. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Al. Anybody else here to speak to something that's not on the agenda? All right. Just talking about properties in general that are blighted. Specific location. Okay, next under old business, I brought this back, the UTV ordinance amendment, because I think found a couple mistakes in it. If you notice on the ordinance, actually a couple were brought to me, mistakes that were in it. I don't think the committee intended for. Under section D, it basically required that a slow-moving vehicle emblem be placed on all of them. I think the intent was for side-by-sides that did not have any lights on that, similar to golf carts.
Yeah.
So that was amendment number 1 to this. And then number 2 under HA, section A, and section G above H. We called for valid, unrestricted driver's licenses. And Dakota can correct me if I'm wrong, but legally, technically, if you have glasses, contacts, anything like that, that's a restricted driver's license. So you wouldn't be able to drive a side-by-side in town. We made it.
Okay,
So
that makes sense.
I had Dakota amend those to bring it back for you guys. So, with that, is there any public comment on this agenda? Okay, council discussion?
Good to me.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move to adopt the amendments to the UTV ordinance.
Second.
I think Julie beat you, Jerry.
I'm sorry.
I think Julie beat you on that one.
Julie?
It's been moved and seconded. Is this a roll call vote since it's a amendment to an ordinance?
It would be.
Julie?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Jared? Motion passes. Next item is ordinance for water rates. This is the second reading for this. Is there anybody from the public that'd like to speak to this agenda? All right. If not, for the council discussion?
Make a motion.
You
Make a motion to be accepted. As written.
Been moved, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. Julie?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Gary? Motion passes 4-0. Second reading on the ordinance for sewer rates. Is there anybody from the public that'd like to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, council discussion?
to adopt the new sewer rate ordinance as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Julie?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Jared?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, new business, Orange Street Development. I believe, Russ, do you want to present this to the council?
Good evening, everybody. So this was an application to rezone the property, basically that is, well, north of the Public Works Building. It's an Orange Street development. They were petitioning to the Planning Commission to be rezoned to IP-1. Currently, it is R-1, which is residential. The Planning Commission had a public hearing on July 12th, and they voted unanimously to recommend to not rezone the property into industrial. So that's kind of what the recommendation.
Do they have a reason for
There was a huge public turnout that was not in favor of it. I think that had a little bit maybe to do with it. The comprehensive plan that the council has adopted was showing that it was residential. I think that had a little bit to do with it. I think there was a number of factors overall. So
Is there anything in what was in zoning, was there anything set up for housing or just industrial?
this was set, or the rezone was that they were going to rezone a part of the property, which was like 6.76 acres, that they were going to rezone into light industrial.
Light industrial means,
Meaning the applicant had proposed to put storage units in that. And according to our zoning regulations, that's where storage units fall, is under light industrial.
no residential was mentioned.
Not at that time, no.
We didn't require.
It's already residential.
It's already residential.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
So-
I didn't miss that, I just,
So the whole parcel is currently zoned residential,
yes.
but they just wanted to rezone 6.76 acres.
How many acres is there?
I want to say it's close to 20. Part of it's in the floodplain, so it's unbuildable, so there's still some area that they could utilize.
You'd referenced that it hadn't fallen in the comprehensive plan, that it,
That it did fall in the comprehensive plan, that it was earmarked for residential housing.
how old is the comprehensive plan?
So the comprehensive plan is from 2008, and it's still kind of on the record as kind of our go-to as far as overall.
But we don't always follow.
We don't always follow that. It's kind of a case by case. So, at the end of the day, we've got to look at the land use and what's actually there, what is actually viable. At the end of the day, what really makes sense. So it's not necessarily we follow it to a T. So.
Any other questions for Russ? All right, thanks,
All right,
Russ.
thanks.
Does the applicant here like to speak to the council?
My name is Stan Croner, 912 8th Street. First of all, I'd like to welcome Mr. Mayor, City Council. Thank you for your time. We do appreciate it. I'm here tonight to ask you to vote yes on the rezoning from R1A to IP1. The reason I'm wearing this shirt tonight is this is the first shirt I screen printed 22 years ago after my dad passed away. His equipment sat for 8 months. Then I took over the business, and this was the first job. So this does mean a lot to me. And the one reason why we came up with this idea, I want to tell you my story is, I have a couple of businesses, screen printing is one of them, and I like to expand that business. To expand, I need more room to grow. So what I did is I went around, looked around in Baldwin for commercial space. I cannot find any. I need a building with a garage doors and more room. And that's why we came up with this idea. First of all, I'd like to show you the lay of the land as we were talking earlier. Right here is Orange Street, right here is Public Works. We're asking to rezone 6.7 acres, which will be able to come right across here. Be right here. So you can see the sewer line comes right through here, goes up here, and goes up here. You have to be creative to work around this. And here's our plan. As you see, we're going to be coming right here. We thought it was 6, must be 6.7 acres we're asking. First of all, I'd like to talk about the outside here, the berm. Put a berm up, put some trees up, so the residents don't have to look at it. That was one of their concerns. Then what we have right here, we're looking at 8 units, the 30 by 60, 1,800 square feet. As you notice here is a caretaker. That's where I would be living, to look over all the property, storage units, and the commercial. I live here, another reason, my partner, Kelly Hockey, we would split the first unit. He does construction, he needs a place to work out. I would put my screen printing there. Then we have entrances right here for parking on this side. Then over here, we have the garage doors, so you can get your equipment in. Then Kelly would split this. Kelly does construction, he needs a place to work. When we bought the property, we were talking to the person who sold us the property. There's several people involved. They said when they developed this sold quick. Good deal. Well, they thought they could do that over here. Well, they could not, because it's not feasible when they brought the property. The concerns that we went out and talked to neighbors. Most of the neighbors were in favor of it. There are a couple who are not. Their concerns is traffic. Right now, what I'm going to say is that residential traffic will have more than our commercial business and storage. And also, I wanted to address they're talking about the heavy trucks. Most of these businesses will hopefully going to be doing LTL, less than a truckload. That's your YRS, UPS, FedEx. They're going to the Public Works right now, delivering, picking up. How come they can't come across the street to us and do the same? And this is all I have right now, all I have. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Kelly Hockey. He'll be speaking also. Thank you.
Kelly Hockey, 1503 College. Oh, I guess I'll start out talking about myself a little bit. Came here in 91 to go to Baker University. I played football and was a business major there. Then I got into construction. I've been with Marland Construction for 19 years now. They're a commercial construction company. And I've been looking for a space here in Baldwin for a wood shop and have not been able to find anything. So we thought this site would be perfect for, our project. And especially how it's right next to Baldwin facilities. We thought it would work out perfect right across the street. And all we're wanting to rezone is that south 6.7 acres. All the rest is going to remain residential. And even if we did, plot it out into 3-acre plots and sold them for $120,000, I don't think you can sell, I don't think you can get someone to buy a house for $700,000 right next to facilities. And the taxes and utilities that our commercial building would bring in would be much more substantial than the residential. We would have a meter on every unit, And then even the inspections for all the building would, it create revenue for the city. And the traffic has been brought up at some of the other meetings, and I know the residential traffic will be much more substantial than the commercial. Every house will average 4 to 5 cars apiece, and they'll be coming and going all day. And just the construction of the residential would, increase the traffic, tenfold. And even if we were really aggressive about doing a residential project there, it would take 2 or 3 years to get that development done. And I think with our commercial and other stuff, we're talking a year or so on the construction of it. And then I think the traffic wouldn't be near as intense as it would be with residential. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Toy Creek runs right through our property, and it has been used as a dump. And I know in the past here, it hasn't been recently, but we have taken, 4 or 5 truckloads of metal and glass out of there. And all we're trying to do is improve the property. And we think the most economical way to use that south 6 acres is with our project. And we would really appreciate your guys' vote. Thank you.
Would anyone like to speak to this? George?
My name is George McCrary. I live at 304 Second Street. Partnered up with these guys. We've went through the process of the planning and zoning, and which is what is leading us to here. We think we have a viable option for some property and a development in an area that there's a huge demand for what we're looking to build in Baldwin. I know there's a demand for trade space, office space in this town. We have a list of 5 people that we've talked to that have said anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 square foot is their demand. So we know there's a demand there. We feel like this is something that is viable to have this council overturn what the recommendation was. The real concern from the planning and zoning was traffic. I think that's been addressed several times. I mean, houses versus a business that's going to shut down at 6 p.m. Average usage, average visit to a storage facility is once every 1 to 2 months after you put storage in. We feel like we've got a good idea, and it's an opportunity for Stan, for Kelly to grow their businesses. We're right next to the municipal plant. That creates some concerns. We know there's some traffic concerns, but right now, let me just give you an idea of the traffic that goes through a residential neighborhood. UPS, Amazon, mail delivery, food delivery, 3 to 4 cars per home coming and going, yard service, trash trucks, city, snow, ice removal, snow plows, Dish Network, senior Meals on Wheels, visitors, friends, maintenance companies, service companies, yard sales, holiday weekend traffic. We're going into football season. There's going to be football events, fire, police, home improvement companies. That's traffic that's already going on in the neighborhood. We're just asking for a small portion, and we don't feel like we're going to increase this list of traffic. Yeah, there's going to be some UPS, there's going to be some Amazon deliveries. That's what we hope that our businesses that would be involved with this would need, is that type of service. We're not looking to put in any type of industrial heavy use to where somebody's grinding, milling, doing extreme chemicals in this facility. Stan's going to live on premises. He goes to bed early, wakes up early, and he watches everything that's going on, and it's one of those deals where it's hands-on. We're not coming from out of town. We're not trying to do a development and try to just get rich quick and get out of town. We're all from here. I've been here since 1972, took about an 8-year stint. I'm the only one in my family that didn't go to Baker. We're going to be here. I'm probably going to die here. we would like to do this for the community. It's not just us. We just think we have a good idea for what our community needs. As far as storage goes, I want to talk just a little bit on storage. There's 3 storage facilities right now, and there's only a couple spots open in all 3 of them. And I say all 3 of them, there's just a couple of spots that's available. We know there's a demand for storage. There's a storage facility being built right now in the southeast corner of Douglas County that's going to be storage and RV parking and RV boat rental. That's part of our original idea. Because there's a bunch of them sitting around town, and we've got friends that are like, man, I'd love to have a place to park our boat or park our camper out of the weather, whether it's a lean-to or a screened-in thing or a closed-in deal with garage doors. We haven't completed that yet, but we know we would start with at least the lean-to so people could get their campers off the streets, out of the alleys, out of the yards in Baldwin. The one thing that is really important with storage in those facilities is that your average market is 3 miles. Anything outside of 5 miles is more than 10 minutes. And for storage and having your valuables, that's what the market dictates. We've looked at this property. There's a major water drainage issue in the middle of this property. There is a 2-foot, 3-foot ditch that goes down in between of those houses, and if you look at Stan's drawing, we've laid that property out just to where that water can come through. We've got a berm in it. We've walked the land. We kind of understand the land, so there's something that we feel like we have a positive there. We're looking at preserving the 11 acres across the creek. We don't want to do anything with that. That's right next to the golf course. And quite honestly, it would be such a task to get across that creek. Commercial utilities would definitely be a plus. Having 8 new businesses in, paying 8 new utility lines, that would be a bonus. Average utilities, I believe, in the city of Baldwin, commercial versus residential is a 28% increase over anything that you pay residential. And the real thing I'd like to close with is that, yeah, we went out on a limb, we bought some property because we saw a need, we knew there was a need. We still think there's a need, and we've grown up here, we've been around for several years. There's a need for commercial businesses in town, and we feel like we've got a great idea proposed to the city that makes sense. So we would ask that you would consider overturning and giving us a yay vote. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak to this agenda item?
I'm Ted Zuzio, and I've lived here 46 years. I live at 126 North 2nd Street. You heard Stan talk about his dad there real quick. I was a teacher and a coach here for 40 years, and he did a lot of t-shirts for us. His dad did. Charged us $1. I mean, hometown love. What I'm speaking to you today is hometown people. These are hometown people wanting to do something for our hometown. They're not going anywhere. They're good people. And that's one of my points. I've lived on Santa Fe Drive, and they developed a whole housing unit behind where I used to live. You know, that 13 acres, and life goes on. I live over here on North 2nd Street, and they built a Alzheimer's unit just across the way from me, and there's trucks bringing in food every day. You hear them, but that's part of life. I was at the July 12th meeting. I was actually the second guy to sign up. I never got to talk because the other people was hammering about how it was hurting traffic and kids running in the street. There's no one playing in the streets anymore. But I mean, that's progress. And I just coming up here on my own free will that I think they're trying to do something positive for Baldwin. And they're hometown kids. So give them an edge. Let them do something positive for the community. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak to this agenda item? Yes, ma'am. Please step up to the mic and state your name and address for us.
My name is Amelia Conley. I live at 1001 Orange Street. I've been there 35 years, working on my house. And
Can you speak up, please?
okay, I don't know how. I am opposed to this suggestion for a number of reasons. One of them being traffic, because everything that goes there has to drive through residential neighborhoods. There is no other way to get there. You really want, I know you always want to make it sound like storage units are going to be rented out to people in town. Well, that's not true at all. People go far and wide to find storage units. So you're going to have strange people driving in there, and you'll have a storage unit right next to a creek, which is begging to have the extras poured into it. It's a beautiful creek. It's beautiful land. And I'm sorry, there's so many things that are not right about it. I'm forgetting them. Sorry, I don't speak well. God, I wish I could remember. Can you guys think of anything? Oh yes, the big thing. Change the zoning, and they can put whatever they want in there. They don't have to, it's light industrial. Any kind of light industrial can go in there. Can't stop it. So that's pretty major. And this is all right next to residential neighborhood, okay? And I think it was zoned residential because that was the best zone for it. So.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak to this agenda item?
Sean Mahaffey, 920 DeSara Circle. I've been around Baldwin for about 15 years, and my kids were raised here. I've had several businesses here. We've got a business going right now, and we're going to be looking for space here in the next 8 to 12 months, and some substantial space. I approve of this. There's not enough of it around here. And what we have left inside the city limits needs to be able to generate income that will maximize it for the city. I've been on the property, I've looked at it, I've been around it. I understand what they're trying to do, and I don't understand what the big issue is, but that would be a place we would like to be. So when we decide to do it, but I approve of it, and I just want to put my 2 cents in.
Where do you live?
920 DeSara Circle in Fire Tree.
Okay.
Yep. So,
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else like to speak to this agenda item? Jim?
Wendy Dahlquist at 1417 10th Street. And, what they're planning on doing, I think it sounds fine. But what my concern is, if it changes to light industrial and this plan falls through, or 5 years down the road, they decide they want to sell it, that means anything can go in there industrial, right? Is that correct?
I believe the site plan would have to be approved by the city.
That what?
A site plan would
Okay.
have to be approved.
But I mean, any industrial would be able to go there and apply for a permit to do something.
After their site plan was approved.
So that's my concern, is that if this falls through or they decide to sell, it wouldn't be residential. They would have to change it back to residential, or some other dump yard or something could go in there. So that's my concern. We have nice homes along there, so, and that concerns me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak to this agenda item?
Hello, my name is Chelsea Paxson. I live at 801 Orange Street. And I would just like to second some of the things that the folks have expressed here who are opposed to building out that area, mainly for the rezoning reason. It does open it up to like light laboratory chemical and other kind of industrial development if it is rezoned to that. I understand from talking to Russ that it could, depending on how Baldwin's rules are, it's zoned as industrial. Usually it's zoned to a commercial, which would be a different kind of rezoning that we just don't have available. Is that right? Yeah. So I think the main issue for me is that industrial rezoning that for some of the reasons that everybody else has expressed, it just opens it up to a possibility if the business doesn't work out, that it could become something that we don't really want in our neighborhood. And as a resident in that area, I am not in favor of that. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak to this agenda item? All right. Close public comment, council discussion?
I think it should be pointed out pretty quickly. The zoning concern, I understand that. The traffic concern, though, I think I want to instill this early on in the conversation, but when I used to be on Public Safety Committee, we had to address the truck route that was coming. We already had one in place down 11th Street, but it got brought up again because of the goal of repurposing the brick streets and to get the trucks off the streets. So, okay, well, let's revisit what this truck route is. Go down 11th, solves everything from the north, most of everything from the east, because they can still use 56. The west, okay, south is where the truck traffic, there were a lot of concerns with that, and we had talked early on about reaching out to the county and going in with them to pave that section of 1600 Road. And then it wouldn't be that much more to pave Orange as well. So I kind of want to tie that in there and bring that up as a possible alternative route. It's not just you have to buzz down 10th and they get down there, because there's 1600 Road that cuts over to Orange Street right there as well. And so for the traffic, alleviation, for that concern, I wanted to bring that up, that truck route conversation is still, I believe, happening as an alternative route to driving through residential streets.
The intersection big enough on Orange Street and 1600 Road to get a semi to come around that corner?
Not now.
Oh, Orange Street, 1600?
Orange Street and 1600.
Oh, I think semis can go.
On the gravel there?
Can they come off that gravel and make that corner?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm speaking if those were redone. If they were paved, that would obviously be alleviated if it wasn't.
Right now, trucks use that to go to the co-op, 1600.
Yeah.
To go to where?
The co-op
From the south.
from the south. A lot of trucks drive that.
We have to take on 1600 Road.
Yeah.
They're not turning there. True, they do come up, you're correct. They do come up there to get to the elevator, but they don't turn there, they go east.
I mean, they used to turn in front of the golf course on Orange Street coming down College. I mean, I can't make that in a car.
Stanley, I'd like to see that map that you had. If you don't mind, please. Am I allowed to do that, Council, or Mayor?
Yeah.
We can see anything that they have, is that correct?
Yeah.
Don't run off. Okay, you brought this
Stan,
up.
you'll probably want to stand up at the mic so anybody at home can hear what you have to say.
I'm going here. This 6.7 acres, you're going to build,
We'll start off with 2 storage units.
you're gonna burn, this is gonna be storage on this side,
Yes, sir.
and this is gonna be your deal.
Commercial, yes.
And you're gonna put a berm around here,
Yes.
and how tall is this berm gonna be?
Well, don't have an exact height, but whatever the planning commission tells us, 4 or 5 feet with trees on top?
Okay, I went out and looked at this. And everything from right here, all the way along this street, slopes to that creek down there.
Mm-hmm.
If you put a berm along here, aren't you putting a swimming pool in everybody's backyard to put rain?
Well, hopefully we can control it and to bring it on into that ditch on Orange Street, then that runs right on down into the creek.
But you're still gonna have it going through people's yards, no? Yes?
No, it'll be going through our property, not their property.
And then Kelly mentioned that there would be someplace else where you were going to have residences. Where is that going to be?
North of there. That's all residential still.
North up Avenue. Yeah, that's residential, yes. Monroe Street's right here.
What's your ingress at that point?
All right.
What's your entrance exit?
Pardon me?
Monroe Street.
Monroe.
Monroe?
Monroe, Stanley.
Monroe Street, where's that at?
It's not there. It's
Yeah.
it's an easement from Monroe.
The city told us that was our access point before we did our.
Right here's Monroe, right through here.
So who owns this lot?
Mr. Wright, I believe, does.
Alan Wright?
I own that. I'm in the process of splitting that lot to build a house there too.
You're going to build a house there?
The city has the right of way through there.
You see what I'm You have no place here, you have no description of the size of lots that you're going to build, or how many houses you're going to build.
We don't know. We haven't got that far. We didn't want to spend the money on that right now.
So then if you did all that, then you'd have to come back to this council to ask permission to do that?
For residential, and later on, yes, probably, yes.
It's already zoned residential.
I understand that it's zoned residential, I heard that. But I do not see how it's torn off.
Is it single family as of now?
Yes.
So if you wanted it to be multifamily, then you'd have to go to the planning commission again and have it changed. But if you wanted to build single family houses, you could. Right.
You have to plat it. You have to do plat.
Right.
So how much distance will be, once, if you start building houses, how much distance is there between the business you're suggesting and the house?
Well, let's go back over now. Well, houses will be coming in, right, so we're talking about Monroe, so they'll be right here, this is right here, 6.7. This will be a residential.
Okay,
That's in the future, this will be the first phase.
so
How
how
many
much
acres is
space
there?
is there gonna be between that and the houses?
To be honest with you, I don't have an answer to that question, which is a city requirement. I don't know which.
Okay, I don't know. But-
It's all part of the site plan.
It's all decided on the
Once
site
you
plan.
platted it, then it's
Right,
platted.
well, I was just curious if that is going to make it hard to sell houses there if you're going to encroach upon your businesses. But if you have no plan for the houses, then it's a moot point, I guess.
All right, right.
So,
Okay.
Thanks, Dan. Other council discussion?
I have concerns over anything that's been said against our planning commission, because there are experts when it comes to this, so it just makes me nervous that, I wish I could hear from them directly on what their reasoning was.
I'd like to know as well what the reasoning was. And they cited the comprehensive plan, and I do have an issue with that being 14 years old.
Right, yeah, that's.
Well, Russ can report on what the plan.
Please, if you don't mind, Russ.
I mean, some of the planning commission concerns was one, the turnout from the neighborhood, which was, they were concerned with the traffic, for one. Their main concern is about, potentially widening, 10th Street out there to where when there is two vehicles that are, going opposite ways, that there's plenty of room. There was just, the other concern is that if it did potentially fall through, what could come in? That was kind of the bigger concern, which they kind of brought that up, and then also one of the ladies over here brought that up as well. Because under our zoning code, storage units fall under light industrial. And in most other kind of like jurisdictions, they fall under a commercial zone area. But with how ours is set up, they have to go the light industrial route. Now, they can't just put anything that they want in there. There's certain parameters, and site plans have to be approved. I mean, there's drainage studies. There's a whole bunch of moving parts that have to be approved prior. So, but at the end of the day, I think the planning commission's main thing was, one, the comprehensive plan that was still intact, and two was the traffic, and then as well as the neighborhood, the amount of people that it turned out from the neighborhood. was,
Sorry, do you remember what that vote count was? How many were in favor and how many were against?
well, we have a 5-member panel, and we had 3 that were there. We actually had 4 that were there, but one of them had to recluse himself because he owns property that adjoins this, and he didn't, so it was a 3-0 vote. So,
I think they wanted to, so they didn't have to.
Oh, I was gonna say, in that case.
so,
Correct, Dakota, I mean, you don't have to recuse yourself unless you have financial interest or gain from the.
If the only issue is that he has property that's abutting the potential acreage that would be changed, he's not an investor in the property. Any time there's a change this, it could affect anyone's home values, so they could be potentially, in the city, anyone could say, yeah, I have a pecuniary interest, but he doesn't have a direct pecuniary interest, so he wouldn't have to recuse himself, whether or not that person felt is ethical to do that. Is always their decision to be able to abstain from that vote. So there's nothing precluding an abstention if they felt so compelled to do so.
For transparency reasons, my property is adjoining this property, so that's why, thank you for that clarification.
You do not need to recuse yourself when you do.
Okay.
yes. So it was a 3-0 vote in favor of denial. So,
Any other questions for us?
Thank you.
thank you.
Now Dakota, since this was a denial, it requires a supermajority from the council.
Correct.
So what does that look like with one council member absent? Is that a unanimous from the remaining council members?
Well, the supermajority, normally I'd have to refer to the exact language in the ordinances. You normally look at it from about 2/3, so normally it'd be 4. But here you've got, still, if it's 4 votes instead of having 5, it doesn't change, I think, the requirements. I think it now becomes unanimous just because doesn't change the number of people who are voting. So 75% of 4, 3 versus 1, but I don't think that changes it. I think you always have to have 4 or more to overrule the recommendation of the planning commission.
Further council discussion, thoughts?
I'm kind of curious of what the residents that live there now thought when the public works building went in. Did anybody that lived there at that time?
How did you feel about it?
If you could step up to the mic and answer for.
She's lived there, so you're not happy. You wanted to know what transpired before.
She'd asked how you felt
I
about
was
it.
just wondering what you thought about that when it came in. Because
Well,
that was open.
It was not welcome. That was just open country until that, so
Have you had any issues with it since it's been there?
they've been great neighbors. They really have. Did lots of traffic. I'm glad I don't have little
More than it was
kids.
before, right?
Yeah, it's very busy all the time. So please consider the possibility that these things that these people want to do could be done somewhere else and not destroy people's lives, because that's what it's going to do. So, yeah, thank you.
It's always tough when you're building stuff like this around residences. I'll come out and say straight up, it is tough finding commercial property in this town, and wherever you put it, the neighbors are going to be upset. And it's not a bad plan, and I feel like the industrial zoning concerns. I feel like those site plans would still have to be approved by the city. There's another buffer there. If anything noxious went in that was beyond what they've presented, I'm in favor of rezoning it.
I still see some things that I don't really care for much. I don't really like the idea of the berm that goes around there, and I know what they're trying to do, and I respect their thoughts and their ideas of trying to do that. But I think if they build a berm around there and you build a ditch down through there, and we get a heavy rain, it'll start washing in there, and then we have a ditch. And then the people that live there, that whole, all that ground, if you drive by and look at it, that whole area down through there drains to the west, right straight to that creek. And there is a draw, a small draw that goes down through the center of that, that probably would carry the water if they could get it there. But they may even would have to do that. And then they talk about building residents over there, but they can't show me where they're gonna build those residents or where the lots are supposed to be or anything. So I would have to say at this point in time, without further information, I probably wouldn't, I couldn't. I like the idea, and I agree with you that business coming into the community would be fine. But I'm not too sure that at this time that I could vote.
But they're not required to show lots.
That's what?
They're not required to show lots right now.
The question is just whether or not you're rezoning it from A to B.
For the 6 acres. The rest of the land is immaterial because that's not part of the reason.
But it was mentioned.
So
It was mentioned and talked about. So do I not take it that that's part of the land?
no, because they have other processes that they would have to go through. The 6 acres does not include any residential, so you're looking at that piece and that piece only when making a decision.
I understand, but I didn't take it that way. I took it when they were talking about it, they were talking about, and this, we will eventually put residents up here.
Right, because that's what's.
And so when that is said, then I'm wanting to see where these residents are going to go. Obviously, that's not part of what we're doing here. 6.7 acres is all we're dealing with. So be it.
And the berm stuff and the water runoff, I mean, that's all addressed in the site plan. When they have the engineers and everything engineer that area, we're just saying, but they're not gonna go get that right now, like they alluded to, and spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 and have the site plan done without having a rezone to know that they're going to be able to do the project.
It's not easy. I live on 10th Street. I don't want more cars coming down my street. But you gotta weigh the good with the bad. We cannot grow commercially in this town, and that is a huge concern for me.
Yeah, that's what makes this tough, is there's definitely a need,
There is.
without a doubt. And I think you would sell out, you'd have tenants in every one of those spaces, but, yeah, it's tough because the citizens, this is where they live and, it's gonna impact them in some way. But as a city, we do need to accommodate new businesses, so.
So the council can make it, motion up or down, for or against, or you can send it back to planning commission with further recommendations. To have the planning commission rework, come back, and then come back with a new recommendation to the council, if they wish to.
So what would that look like? What more guidance can we give them that they haven't already considered? I don't know.
So there were
I just know that.
there's
Yeah.
normally 5 in the planning commission.
Correct.
One was absent and
Yes.
one
One
recused
recused.
himself
Mhm.
and it wasn't necessary.
There was
to
only
actually-
3 there.
Okay,
Yeah. There was only 3 at every meeting we were at. Then there was 2 at one, so they canceled it because they didn't have a quorum. And then at the first meeting, the first 3 we got was different. We presented at that first meeting, then it got canceled a month. Then we had our next meeting. There was 3 guys there. 2 weren't there the first time. So we had to totally represent. Yeah, and Ted Mata was totally against it. I mean, from the get-go. I mean, he had talked to somebody else already. It was a done deal. So, I mean, then he talked to Dustin Bay. That's why it was a 3-0 vote. And they were worried about the light industrial being able to do anything there. But like you said, with needing a site plan, you can't do anything there. You have to get a site plan approved of what you're doing.
Do we have to make a motion to go back
Is this going to be a first reading?
Well, this is an ordinance. This is,
It isn't?
Yeah, it is.
oh, it is an ordinance?
It is,
Oh, I apologize.
this is just the first reading.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
I'm like, what?
Sorry, my bad.
That's okay.
Do we have to make a motion to go back to zoning?
If you want to send it back to zoning,
I'll
yes.
make a motion, we go back to zoning.
With what recommendations? I mean, we want to give them.
What
some-
guys are gonna be there?
We want to give them some sort of,
Some kind of guidance or recommendation on,
So they have a 5-member council, or a 5-member group.
Can I ask one of y'all who spoke, George, Kelly, Stan, somebody? They voted no on the light industrial.
Correct.
With what you guys are trying to do, is there any other classification you could do it under, or do you need it to be the light industrial? Because we can send guidance back saying, if you can do what you're trying to do with a different zoning, send it back to the planning commission, that could be a different conversation.
We wanted to do it originally commercial, but because of the storage, it was in the current city statutes and the ordinance that we had to put it as a light industrial one. And that was the reason. If we were to go back and say, hey, okay, can we make this commercial and take it out of the industrial game completely and have it commercial to where there's more guidelines for commercial versus light industrial? Then we would probably say, okay, we need a special permit for the storage to have it as commercial or an industrial in a commercial area. Or do we plat it separate? What you guys are talking about, thank you. Because we didn't get this consideration before and we've not had one recommendation. They just said, no, forget it. And we really do appreciate this. We'd be open to zoning part of it industrial. The part that they're talking about that's industrial, the real need for the industrial is on the very west side that's going to have trees backing it. That's not going to be, won't be visible to very many. Won't be visible in the neighborhood. It'll be behind a building and storage facilities. That's where storage is. So I appreciate your consideration. Would love to take some recommendations of what your thoughts would be, because we want to grow some businesses in Baldwin. Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Motion, I'd like a second, is that what you said?
if there's a second. I said motions to send it back to planning commission?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I won't, do you have a suggestion? Do you have guidance for them about? Well,
we need to send it
they
with
already
some kind of
voted 3-0.
recommendation.
I'd like to have more people on the zoning
Okay.
to make the decision. I don't feel like the 3 people was enough.
There's
Is there a way you can do
reason-
conditional use? Leave it zoned the way it is, but do a conditional use?
Yeah, you can submit a conditional use permit, even if you zone it commercial. They can submit a conditional use permit just for the storage units too. I mean, that's an option. But conditional use permit, if something ever happens to the structure, they couldn't build it back without a new conditional use permit.
I don't disagree with what they want to do, but nobody taking it out of character.
Well, let's act on your motion. You made a motion.
I made a motion.
Is there a second? Motion fails for lack of second.
Yes.
But we don't have to decide on this tonight,
We
right?
do not have to decide on it. It's an ordinance.
This is only the first reading.
So if it's an ordinance, you couldn't make a motion today anyway.
Well, if you send it back.
You can make a motion.
So you can make a motion to send it back.
I mean, technically, the council can make a motion to approve it.
Right.
It's the council decision to hear an ordinance twice,
Mhm.
or if you want to pass it. I mean, that's your guys, your all decision, so.
Yeah, we've done twice for everything, right?
You can do it once this time, Steve.
Do what?
You can do it once this time.
I wouldn't want to deviate from what we've done in the
Yeah.
past. I support
Especially
the change in the
something-
zone, but I don't support deviating from our practices. as
Right,
council.
especially something like this, that I think we really need to do our due diligence. So I think we should.
Is there anything council would like staff to work on, I guess, then from this meeting to next meeting?
I'd like for them to have some options, come up with, maybe assist them in some alternate, possibilities like you discussed.
Well,
like
since we
options.
started our application, IP1, don't we have to finish that out?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. The city would have to let us know that.
No, you never have to finish it out. You can always.
That's kind of what I heard at the city and the planning and zoning commission. They said it's IP1, so we're voting on IP1.
Maybe at that level, but you can always rescind your application, redo it, and send it back through. You don't have to just once you submit an application, follow it through, just to follow it through. If your plans change during that application process, we've had people pull their application, submit a new one, based on feedback they might have received.
Russ, didn't you tell me that, I think you said that, storage units are typically commercial? They're usually zoned commercial, but in Baldwin City, they're.
Yeah, so usually in most jurisdictions, they fall under a commercial zoning. But for whatever reason, with our zoning regulations, they actually fall under light industrial. So which is kind of different from other places. One of the things, I mean, there's a couple different options. Like, I guess you could say that we could do a conditional use, and they could, get it rezoned as a commercial area, and then have it rezoned as a commercial with a conditional use for, storage units. And then that way, if it did fall through, then it would just be a commercial area in general. So, I mean, there's a couple of different things. The problem with commercial and with what they're kind of wanting to do, we probably have to do two conditional use permits, because they're wanting to have caretakers on site quarters. So there's a couple of different things that we could work through that, but then we would have to start that all over at Planning Commission. So the earliest that we'd be able to do that would be October, because we're already past our September window for.
So, Russ, does the council not have the latitude to pass this with conditions under that zoning? With conditions that it's going to be storage units and this commercial building?
I would have to refer to our city attorney on that, just to make sure. I'm not for sure off the top of my head on that. I've never had this situation come up.
I would assume we could put conditions on and approve it, couldn't we? Council? I mean, maybe that's something to research by next week.
That's something I do not want to answer that on the fly. For multiple reasons. That being said, if the question is about what I would probably like is some guidance from staff and from council about what those conditions might look like. 'Cause I think that would probably help guide whether or not those are allowable and what grounds they fall under. So maybe that would be something you can give some guidance to me about what even conditions that have been discussed would be from like a caretaker, residential, that's an issue, or if there are other additional issues in having multiple conditions on top of each other, how those interact. I'd want to have some time to take a look at that.
Yeah, so I would have to defer to Dakota, and we'd kind of have to work through that together to be able to come back and answer those questions. But I think there is options as far as not being necessarily stuck with IP1. But my understanding at the beginning was that's what, when Out West Storage went in, that's what they were required to do, per the city attorney at that time. And, so we were just following the zoning regulations at the time.
Was that rezoned to be?
To be IP1, yes.
What was it before?
I want to.
I believe that was just residential.
I want to say that was.
Houses up to that.
Yes, it was R dash. So it was the same classification that they have, R-1A, and it butts right up next to Hay, and had been industrial for years and years. So it was kind of made sense in that regards. So, but that's something as far as we could get back with you on that.
All right. Any other council discussion?
I wasn't going to talk, but You believe that, Jerry?
No, I don't
Tell you
believe that
different.
at all. You talk.
I'm Ron Dahlquist. We just moved up here in September, thanks to Jerry. But one thing that I'm most concerned about is the traffic. 10th Street, as most of you know, that is about 24 foot wide. And one truck and maybe a half a car can pass each other on 10th Street. Same way with Orange Street. And the city vehicles are pretty courteous to one another, and they kind of work around that. But the UPS truck, you know, when he's making deliveries, you can't hardly get around him on 10th Street. And on the city has a right-of-way of 40 foot on my front part of my driveway, or front part of my house, and a 40-foot right-of-way on my south end there. There's plenty of room there, you know, but on 10th Street, there's going to be a lot of people lose their front yard or half of their front yard if you put in, you know, widen that street. And that's the only concern that I would have. You know, I don't blame these guys for buying the property and trying to make some money on it. You know, everybody, that's what everybody wants to do, but there's going to be a lot of upset people losing 40 foot on their front part of their yard. And I think the city's going to have to, and they've got the right of way, and I think that's what they're going to have to do, is they're going to have to widen the street, because there is no avenue into that property other than if they go down Orange Street to 1600 Road and 1600 Road back to whatever that street is, you know, that's wide enough to handle the traffic, you know, and that's what I'm concerned about. We don't have, you know, right now is basically a cow path, you know, in, cow path out. And so you're going to have to, the city's going to have to widen the streets, and they've got the right of way to do it, but they're going to have to eat the expense of putting them streets in or widening them. That's my concern. Appreciate you listening to me.
Okay. Any further council discussion? I guess the only thing, you know, my thoughts is, yeah, I get all the concerns with the traffic. I've heard from citizens in that area. But we really need to think about commercial involvement too. I mean, you know, we have a problem. We talked about strategic planning, we talked about every aspect on it. So I would just urge, you know, the council members to go out and get the information they need. Ask city staff in the next 2 weeks any information you guys need so that you can make your decision at the next council meeting on which way you want to go. All right. Okay, next agenda item, strategic planning. If you all want a mass exodus, go for it. That's usually what we get at this point.
To hear about our strategic plan?
Exciting stuff.
Hey, before we go, I have one question. Who's this gentleman here? I don't know him. I know Glenn.
Dakota Loomis, he's our attorney.
Oh, I understand. Cool. Okay, I didn't know who he was. Okay.
You probably don't want to know
You're
who
the
he is.
administrator.
Correct.
Gotcha, I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay, strategic plan. Julie, I'm gonna kind of kick this over to you.
Yeah, the sheet that is in your packet that kind of has the framework for what we discussed at our last meeting. We tried to divide the plan into 3 different parts. Municipal services, economic development, and quality of life. And we just wanted to bring this to the council so that you guys can kind of see what we're wanting to do, and if you have any concerns or ideas, I'd be glad to hear it. The high-level focus and the identified projects are things that we're going to be working on, putting under these different categories. This is just kind of an example of what we're going to be working on.
Anybody from the public like to speak to this in your guys?
Yeah, we'd love to hear your ideas.
Some exciting stuff. Council discussion, thoughts. I think the committee's just looking basically to say, hey, no votes intended for tonight, but just to kind of get
Right.
feedback saying, are we going down the right track in the strategic planning committee?
And we don't really have a mission statement yet.
That's where I was gonna start right there.
I saw it. We started with that, and we just got so bogged down in, trying to say, how does this fit into our mission?
Right.
So we decided to kind of let that go for now and work on this and then go back.
It's okay. I mean, it's just a matter of kind of how we talked with Patty. That you can go inside out or outside in.
Right. And
Having that vision statement is, if you had it handy, it would make this so much easier because you could just trickle down and then just branch out. But if we have to come from the outside up to that vision statement, I'm okay with that too.
Okay.
But I kind of would like to have all the council members thinking about what that might look like.
Well, I have a whole sheet.
I'm sure you do. I kind of got
And what we may do, I don't know if Julie thinks of this, maybe next month's work session is strategic planning. And we try to pin down amongst all of us a mission statement.
Love that.
And in that way, it gives the committee something with a mission statement that they can then start their work down.
Okay. And we're gonna try to split it into like 2 to 4 years or 5 to 10 or whatever, eventually for these projects. Yeah, I think that, doing a work session on this would be great, and you guys can kind of think about it before we get to it, with your ideas and see how we go from there. But we just wanted to get something in front of you before we went any further.
And really, we really want feedback because we want this, I don't want this document, I mean, this is a big document we've been working on for 3 years almost, 3 years in January. I want it to be council, we don't want, committee, yeah, they're spinning through a lot of this stuff, but ultimately, I really want everybody, I gotta get everybody's opinion on this.
We need feedback to kind of steer us in the right direction.
I feel like we wasted a little bit of time with, and I know you can't do anything about it, but when we were with Patty, and I'm guilty by far the most, but when we were having that vision statement conversation, I think it was just understanding what a vision statement actually is, and I just kept slipping down into a tagline, and I think going in with a better understanding of what a vision statement is, a mission statement is, and a tagline, and those differences is going to be super. I think we probably get a lot more done this time than we did when we were in session.
Yeah, I felt like we spent
I totally didn't. I
ridiculous
shot
amount
out
of
like
time
5
on it.
sentences. She was like, "That's a tagline. That's a tagline."
Yeah.
So I think on this, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but really, we wanted council to verify that we're on the right track with the 3 headings.
Right.
Municipal services, economic development, and quality of life, because we kind of pared that a little bit down from what Patty had.
We had a 4th pillar.
We did.
Yeah. It was infrastructure.
It was infrastructure.
Oh,
We put
okay.
that
Municipal
under
services.
municipal
That would go under
services.
municipal.
So we wanted to make sure, we're trying to peel back the layers of the onion and say, okay, on these 3, are you guys good with that? And then that way, that gives the committee the next step to go look through that.
I think so.
Yeah.
It makes it easier.
All right. Good, Julie? parking ordinance discussion. I think we have somebody here that'd like to speak to this, right?
Do we have an ordinance? Oh,
No, that's what we're
it's
discussing.
like I didn't, I
No.
missed it. Okay.
You guys want to speak to this agenda item? Amy?
I'm Amy Wright, and 822 Jersey. I've come to several of you guys for several years about parking. We have a big parking problem downtown. I get probably complaints at least once a month from the businesses that we rent to about the parking problems. From the people above, parking in front all day, which if that is something that I manage, I try to make them park somewhere else, but again, it's public parking, so I can't demand that. With the RG fiber trucks, we've had tons of complaints about that, to the amount of people that work in each business, all parking in front of their businesses. So it's just been a big problem, and I'm glad you guys are starting to talk about it.
Thanks, Amy. Anybody else like to speak to this agenda item?
I'll say something. Alan Wright, 822 Jersey. Automotive repair businesses are just notorious for having multiple cars. As you probably, every business that we have that does auto repair, you can see that. Their parking lot's full, whether it be on the highway, both of the businesses on the highway are that way. The one that's downtown is that way. So I don't know if there's something, that if the car's idle, if it could not be parked, in a public parking spot. That's kind of my comment. And then I don't know, we have residences downtown that live above businesses and they have to park somewhere. I don't know what the answer is if you have it's a great problem to have the whole downtown full. If you're in Lawrence, you cannot park in front of the business you're going to. You're going to walk a block or whatever. But in Baldwin, people expect to be able to pull up right in front of wherever they're wanting to go, and they want to be able to walk in. But it's not always reality. But anyway, residents have to park there, stay overnight, and then people that work downtown want to park there. I don't know if you have a 2-hour limit of parking, or maybe people that have residences have a pass to where they can park there overnight and others can't, or I don't know what the answer is. You got kind of a tough chore here to figure it out, but it is a problem. But anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you. We hear that a lot.
Anybody else like to speak to this agenda item? So I kind of brought this to the Public Safety Committee just because I have been hearing complaints about parking. Not just downtown, it's all down 8th Street I've had complaints about. One suggestion or one idea that somebody brought me that I spoke about in the Public Safety meeting was making some sort of ordinance where if you, I don't know, honestly, I don't even know how you do it. So that's why we're talking as a council. But if one business or one residential unit or whatever are only allowed 3 cars on the street at one time or whatever, I don't know how you enforce that, right? So, I know that's difficult, but I do know that we have some problems in specific sections of town. Or do we try to send city staff out to work with those specific problems, see if that helps before we go to the next step of an ordinance? My only concern with sending city staff out, if somebody says I'm not doing that, we have nothing. I know, as Alan mentioned, we do have an auto place downtown that I've gotten complaints about numerous times. I think if the council is so inclined, we can work with that individual since we own property right behind their business and maybe see if we can't work a deal to try to lease them some space to get cleared up some of that congestion down that block. Same thing with RG Fiber. If we talk to them, I know before Mike passed, we kind of started down that conversation route to say, hey, would you be interested in leasing this space over here for the city for your guys' parking to get them off the street. So I'm interested to hear ideas. I mean, we're trying to, the Public Safety Committee just really wanted to bring it to the council to have a discussion to see if anybody else had any ideas on how we can address this problem without taking up, police,
Right.
too much police time.
That parking lot that's just down on I, that is open a lot. I mean, there's parking there a lot of the time available, and
Which one?
Next to City Hall.
Oh, yeah,
City Hall,
yeah,
right
yeah.
there on High.
On the south end.
Yeah, maybe the business people that own businesses could park there and walk to their business. That way it would open up whatever parking they're taking up for their customers. And
We've tried talking to some of them about that. I think the biggest thing that I get is, well, I don't want to walk 2 blocks in the snow, or, something like that. So
Well, yeah.
I do hear that.
But if they're complaining about not having parking in front of the store, I mean, you kind of have to take and give a little.
So there currently is not any ordinance, like you can park, like, so what if I just left my Subaru just parked on the street for 6 months? There's nothing saying I can't?
There's a 48-hour.
Okay, so there's already something in place.
There's a code on that. We have codes on that.
You have to,
It's just not.
you have to tag it.
Yeah, and the problem with that is you can just move your vehicle.
You move it or they
One-
tear off the tag.
Right.
We saw that even on it's easier on the highway when I was a trooper to do that because most people aren't going to drive by their car, so often, but in town, I mean, literally all you gotta do is tear those off or scrape it off.
The next lot.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll remove it.
Exactly.
But we got, there's a 48-hour thing. There's also, they're talking about parking big place down on Jersey Street too that needs attention, not only on 8th Street, but there's one down on Jersey Street too. It's what they're parking on the sidewalk.
The Jersey camper? Yep.
Yeah.
We need to get that, taken care of.
Well, that's the thing, it's nothing new, that camper's been there forever. I know he's been cited, there's no teeth or no, citation, go to court, have a judgment, it's just like, okay, we'll send him another letter in another year,
And probably 5 years ago, the owner to the house to the west of there came and complained to the city council because he couldn't sell his house because of the trash and the way that place looks. And nothing was done, and he finally sold it for less than what he wanted to sell it just to get out of it. And that's ridiculous that we have to take less for a piece of property because somebody wants to be a hoarder and those vehicles have not moved in years.
So another thing is on the health side, is like, I have a property across the street from there, so I was over there in the evening, and the mosquitoes just eat you up, because like on the camper, there's a tarp, and it's holding water, and in the yard, there's a tarp, and then there's a lot of stuff holding water, so mosquitoes are hatching out. Same way on the 8th Street, behind his house, he's got tires and all kinds of stuff in his yard that, breed mosquitoes and probably other rodents and vermin and whatever, because you got piles of stuff sitting around. You see possums and raccoons running around at night because there's all this stuff where they can live.
I was at that meeting when that gentleman was here for that. He stood up and talked about that. Now, I don't know what I was doing, that I would be at a city council meeting. Maybe that was when I was attempting to do this the first time around.
Or you're lost.
Well, I'm glad you directed me the right direction. But I was here when that happened. I remember that incident when he was complaining about it. Somebody was complaining, that man that was wanting to sell the house was complaining about it.
Well, it's not changed, it's probably gotten worse.
Oh, it's gotten worse.
So where would the council, I guess, where would we like to start at on this?
Call record.
So you would need to make some kind of an ordinance or alter a current ordinance.
Give it more teeth, more substance.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do something.
How do we give it more teeth, chief?
You're gonna have to put something, you're gonna do something to put teeth in.
You really have lots of issues when it comes to a parking ordinance, like, just for discussion's sake, talking about limiting the number any one entity or person can have on a city public street. Then it comes down to how do you, the investigation that it takes and man hours of my people's time to investigate a parking issue, to determine who owns it, then are we citing the individual or you're citing a particular vehicle? And then let's just say for discussion's sake, and this is all stuff we can talk about at the next public safety committee meeting, that say a family decides to have a family gathering at their house and 5 of these vehicles belong to one family, but they're just visiting. They actually are in different places in the city normally. But they're now violating an ordinance just by having Sunday dinner. So you sometimes create problems where you're not anticipating to have problems. But what you're trying to do is try to solve the problem. And is that problem something that has to go by ordinance, or is it something that can be alleviated by negotiation? But as far as trying to get more teeth into it, that really is through an ordinance where it has to go before municipal court. That's where the teeth is at, not by an officer hanging a piece of paper on someone. It's the court process that has the teeth. But you have to come out and try to figure out every scenario to where you're not punishing people that don't need to be punished. You're trying to curb an issue with maybe some specific people or specific entities.
So
how do you get it to the court if you don't take an action to start with?
Well, that's the only way it gets to court, is to have an action.
And so an action would have to be through an officer, is that correct?
For municipal court, yes.
So that the only
Or
way.
codes enforcement.
The only way we can get it to a court is through one of your officer.
Yes, but what I'm saying is your teeth is actually with municipal court.
Yes, I understand.
And a judgment at court.
But it's getting it there, that was what I know about, and that has to be through an officer, so.
Yes.
Or action of some kind.
Or a codes person, or a codes violation.
And to address your situation that you're talking about, we have a nuisance ordinance or code, city code, that you can.
Well, I thought there was something about blocking sidewalks as well, because I know.
I believe there is, and that's why I was going to ask.
Yeah. 7th Street.
On that, is that a towable offense under our city code?
That particular situation you're talking about over there, you're talking about an improved surface that it's actually on. There's been allowed parking throughout the city in different areas for just that. This just happens to be a very large vehicle.
But it's blocking the sidewalk.
I haven't been able to to look at that specifically.
Yeah, it's 2 vehicles blocking the sidewalk.
So if it's blocking the sidewalk, can we tow that immediately?
Probably after a process of notifying the owner that it for 48 hours and stuff like that, which basically ends up being 2 48-hour notices.
But, so Russ, correct me if I'm wrong, you've notified that gentleman before, right? We've sent him letters.
Correct. I've sent him letters numerous times for the one over with the RVs that Alan is referencing. Yes.
So then what's the next step after that, since he's not?
So the next step after that would be basically we would issue a citation at that point that we would, the code enforcement, which is now Stu, would issue that, and then that individual would have to appear at municipal court that following month.
What type of citation would he issue?
It would just be kind of like a nuisance or something, and we would document that ordinance as well as that
And he
section.
has X amount of hours, X amount of days or whatever to move it, and if it's not moved, we do it.
So that's what the regular written notice is, to give them, let me just come up here to talk. So when I started with codes enforcement, how it was told to me is that one, we would issue a regular certified letter, to kind of give them notice on that, like whether it's high grass, trees, shrubs that, are low hanging, just different stuff like that. That way we issued it on paper. If they didn't do anything, like say for instance with mowing, then we would actually, go ahead and mow their yard and they would get charged. With something like this, I was told that we would issue a citation at that point.
What's the citation?
It's just like a regular officer citation,
So
like,
you would have an officer issue a citation?
no, the codes enforcement officer has a citation book that's
They
exact.
can do that?
Yes.
And that makes a court appearance?
Correct.
I'm not familiar with that process.
So it's not in every jurisdiction, but in our jurisdiction, we have the authority to issue a citation at that point, but we have to give them proper notice.
Has the citation been issued to this guy?
No, in a roundabout way. I've sent numerous letters, but the last attorney was not willing to prosecute for that issue. So
Is our attorney now willing to prosecute that issue?
So
I will take any and all citations under advisement that come to me, and in all honesty, it's a case-by-case basis probably. I mean, I think it's a discussion that Russ and I have had in the past and will continue to have. But I think if a citation's written and comes to me, then I'll take it up. Certainly not something that I can just, every time a citation's written, I just put it on a shelf and go, never mind, I'll never see that again. So that should be something that we have to take up. And I think probably have a city staff between Russ and the court about how we want to handle things going forward. If there's specific ways in which we handle above and beyond the letter and the citation process.
In my opinion, if he's been warned numerous times through letters, certified letters, we need to cite and we need to let the.
So, and he's been warned with mowing and some, with the vehicles that are parked there. One of the things that we run into is that they have antique tags on them. So they are considered licensed. Several years ago, he was issued a letter that he couldn't have the vehicles in his backyard. So then he just proceeded to tow them around to the front so that he met with the ordinance. I will say that last summer he did make some headway in his backyard, not necessarily his front yard, but with hauling off some junk and stuff that I had visited with an individual that said that she lived there. So that's kind of where it's at right now. I think Stu has issued some more letters on that, but I'd have to just double check with him and kind of work and help, work through that with Stu.
Stu, is that you?
Come on up, Stu.
Come on, I have not met you, I don't know you. You talking about
Oh, you'll get to know Jerry real quick.
Well-
Welcome.
the antique tag thing? Really doesn't mean that much because they can register it as an antique tag. And what they're required to do from that point on is not re-register the car, but they have to pay property tax on it every year. If they don't pay the property tax, then the tag's no good. But you don't know that by running it through the computer and finding out.
But that'd be on law enforcement.
But that would be on, because as codes enforcement, we have no access to any of that kind of information.
They're there for the safety.
Gotcha.
Of
I was just putting out information, boss.
I'm just saying. Their eyes glass over when you start talking about tags and registrations.
Is there an ordinance against something that is untagged? I mean, if they weren't tagged, would there be something that could be cited and they could be towed and impounded, or what's the deal?
I don't know.
Correct.
I'm losing the battle as I go along
City
here.
Street only, if it's in their private property, you can't touch it.
It's not on private property.
Well, let me interject
It's on
something.
sidewalk.
The letter, another letter has been sent to that property on Jersey Street recently. It would be up for a citation just about any time now. That antique tag and stuff may do a little bit or it may not do a little bit. Those vehicles are incapable of moving on their own power, especially in a 30-day time period. It's still a violation. And in my opinion, from what I've seen, now Russ has seen more than I have, those vehicles are incapable. They're blocking the sidewalk. They got flat tires.
Yep.
the antique tag doesn't fly that well with the other ordinances or city regulations that are written that would overpass that. But to answer Alan's question, we're doing all we can do. There's a 10-day grace period. We usually give them, talking to Russ, give them a 2 or 3 week window to do something. So that property would be up for a citation here shortly, just about any time now.
You're gonna get along fine. I like your attitude.
Well, but I mean, I'm new here. I've been with the county for 2 3/4 years doing inspections up there. Picking up on the zoning real quick. Russ has been great to work with. But there's a lot of that around the city. Just about anywhere you turn, there's things that need to be done. But I would agree with Russ, at some point, it would have to be taken up at a higher level. Writing citations and sending out letters is my job, but at the next level up, something would have to be done in order to protect people's property rights, like what Alan's talking about. It's a total disgrace across from his property. I wouldn't want to live there. It's bad. It's really bad. You know, there's several in town that I've picked out and probably put out 12 or 13 letters since I started here, and there's more every other 2 or 3 days. And we work with people. I got a call from the guy across from the college. He's making progress. I said, we've got photographs. It's on the computer. As long as we can see your progress, you're doing something. We're not going to throw the entire book at you. But if you're not doing anything, then it will be a citation and it will take up to the next level.
So that house that sits back in that back, I don't think it's gonna permit me.
Pardon?
That house that sits back behind, that house you're talking about.
The one across from Baker?
I don't think it's gonna
Storage shed
permit me.
back
Yeah, I got, out of the last few letters I sent, I got 1 return phone call so far. And we haven't had any come back that I'm aware of, but.
So, and usually what we do is we wait till we get the regular green card back, and then from the day we get that back, then we give them, that's when the 10-day true window starts, according to, visiting with the city attorney and how, we can proceed, so.
All right, thank you
All
guys.
right.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, so I guess this council, do we want to direct city staff to handle these on a case-by-case basis, see if it gets better? Do we want to start drafting an ordinance, see if we can even come up with something? What would the council like for the committee?
Sounds like we've got something in the process and something's moving. Let's see what happens with that before we go further.
You know, by case by case, everybody?
I mean, have any citations been given out up to this point for any of this stuff?
No.
Well, it's kind of like the houses you were talking about. There's a couple of them in town that were supposed to be demolished. And they kept getting letters and letters and letters.
We
So
talked
I
about
know
one of them.
When Ed was here, he was
So we-
doing those.
Yeah, there's one
We
on,
did. We
one
had-
on Dearborn that's been empty for years.
We attempted, that one had some,
Is it derelict properties?
that one was tied up, the one you're talking about that Ed was working on was tied up in probate. I do know that, and so there were some court issues there.
Which one is it?
The one on
The one on Dearborn, yeah, down or
Dearborn.
something.
We're looking at that right now, that house, to see what we can do, or restart that process. That's where we're at with it.
Because that's essentially a condemnation by the council of the city. Okay. Council committee reports, budget finance, Corey.
We have not met since last council meeting. The next one is canceled on the 19th, so that would leave us having the next on September 9th. If I have that right. Okay.
Alright, community development, Corey.
Also have not met since last council meeting. Our next meeting is the 22nd, second floor City Hall, 4 o'clock.
Public safety, Susan.
We had a great meeting. Terry Baker joined us and we talked about the Orchard Street crossing. And going across Orchard from High Street, back where the nursing home is. He doesn't feel it's stable enough to get the fire tanker truck over it. But I guess, wheels are already in motion on this, engineering's out to bid.
I've got some information.
Oh, great. And COVID funds will be funding the project. And then we discussed the parking ordinance and all of the various code violations around town. So welcome aboard, Stu. You got your work cut out for you. And then lastly, we discussed some of the pros and cons of electric police cars. Something we just kind of bring up once in a while because it's obviously moving in that direction. I did a little research. Leewood campus was the.
I think Lenexa did too.
Oh, Lenexa did too. I saw where Leewood added a Tesla. Anyways, major concerns that we talked about were, police cars have to run constantly, so the energy it could be an energy drain. So that could be problematic, but obviously there's some way that they're working around that because police stations are starting to bring them on. Upside was that they require no maintenance and it saves substantially on fuel cost, and Baldwin PD is spending a lot of money on maintenance. It's right now we're just kind of gathering data and more to come on that. And lastly, we just picked a design for the UTV tax.
Not to be negative, but, and I don't think it was to sound negative. How long will the batteries last?
Well, it depends on how you drive the car, but they're rated for 270 miles.
No. Before we have to replace it.
I think early studies are showing 7 to 10 years. I mean, they're like any battery. They did great.
And that's under normal use for family use?
Yeah.
It's not taking into consideration the amount of time that it would be under operation as patrol cars?
Correct.
Would that make any difference in the?
I think it would make some difference. I mean, you're not going to get the type of mileage out of them that you would under normal operation. But I don't know if that's going to degrade the battery any quicker because I'm no scientist or battery manufacturer, but I think what degrades the battery the quickest is charging it, going back down, charging it, going back down. Yeah. So that's my understanding.
And that would be an up and down charge if you put it every day.
Well, and it is when you're driving them to work and stuff as well. But Chief and I had a conversation about this today, and he's going to reach out to Lenexa or Leewood or whoever, because they had to do substantial study on this matter as well. So he's going to get that data, bring it back to the committee.
Great.
How's he feel about it?
How's he feel about it? I think, I don't want to speak for Chief, but I think he's the type that if the data shows him that it'll work and that it can be successful in our community, then I think he'd support it.
That's a good answer.
He's about right. I told him I didn't want to be the test dummy. I need someone to test it out for us. We're small enough that we can't really afford the time and effort to test and evaluate things.
Right.
So we rely on the bigger agencies to do that for us.
Sure.
And then bring us back the good data and make decisions based off that.
Yeah.
What he said, Corey, would be exactly the answer that I would expect if I asked him that question. To the T.
Well, I will say that we briefly discussed it at budget and with Chief as well for a little bit. And, that my brief research showed that it was about a 3-year payoff. The Teslas paid for themselves after 3 years. Now, if you're crashing the battery in 3 years, you have to extend that a little bit because you're replacing the battery. But even at that point, if that cost stretches out and ends up being a 4-year, 5-year payoff, it still might make sense. So a lot of considerations.
Oh yeah, I mean, just like Chief and I talked about, they just had a car in this week. Is that what you said? One of your Dodges, one of the newer Dodges, $5,000 fix.
Yeah.
Right there.
Wow.
So.
And that's not the first one.
So I think there's some benefit. It's definitely going to be a learning curve. I think for Chief and for everybody else. But if we don't have to reinvent the wheel, we can go out and get other people's data.
Right, absolutely.
Look at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's good that we have some resources that are
Yeah, it is.
close.
It really is.
Next meeting is September 13th at 4 o'clock.
Public Works and Utilities, Julie.
Yeah, I have a list here. I I know it's late, so I'll just kind of.
This is early.
Harbor construction began chip and seal. I'm sure everybody's aware of that, if you're driving on it. They will come back in 30 days and do a brooming, pick up the loose materials.
Just say 4.
The pool was drained on August 8th, and there was some unknown discoloration on the bottom of the deep end that will be, need to be removed. Not sure what it is or what caused it, but it's there and it has to be taken care of. Waiting on orange paint for the north tower, water tower, to redo the maple leaves. Only, Bob wanted to make sure that Scott knew that that was the only place that we could put it. I said, I'll tell him, and then he didn't show up.
Maybe he's watching.
Yeah, well, the North 400 water line extension easements have been drawn up, and after they're signed by the property owners, they can be notarized and recorded with the Registry of Deeds, and then they can start on that. Fire Tree Lake project due for work in October. Also, at that time, cleaning out both creek road crossings on Fire Tree Avenue as well. I told you I had information about the Orchard Lane thing. There's no update on that from the staff. But Rob did show us where they were gonna have to build the road when they go to replace that culvert, so.
Not looking forward to that.
It's in the works, yeah, I know you're not. The Newton substation, it's suggested that in 3 months they retest and evaluate the transformer oil. The feeders are working correctly, the SCADA is working, main reclosure is working correctly, the 10 new batteries are working fine. Our next meeting is September 8th. And the strategic planning committee meeting, which I'm gonna have next.
Go for it. Keep on going.
It's going to be on, I don't have any update because we already talked about everything, but the next meeting is August 26th at 3 o'clock on the second floor of City Hall.
City administrator, staff comments?
I think we've got some statistics cases there from the PD, but I think that's the only thing I would add if you had a chance to look at that, or any questions about it.
You just wanted to talk tonight.
I'm just, yeah, that's it. What?
Any council comments? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move the adjournment.
Second.
Been moved by Julie, seconded by Susan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes, we're adjourned.
Code enforcement.